Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dayton Christian High School Theater at our cafeteria. We are so thankful that we have this cafeteria because actually 2 weeks ago, there was a flood, and there were 50 different spots from the ceiling that were just streaming water. We didn't know if we were going to lose our lights, our sound, and if mold was going to be an issue here where we would never be able to be in this space again. So we are truly thankful to be able to be here and to present this show to you tonight. As we get started, just a couple of notes, and then I'm going to ask Gary Recker to come up and pray for us. But first, the show is a little over, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes without intermission. The first act's a little over an hour. If you need to use the restroom, it's right down the hallway on the right-hand side. I also need to ask you, if anybody has a cell phone, does anybody have anything like that, cell phones? If you've got it, please turn, oh, you do, thank you. All right, so please turn your cell phone off because the cell phones can interfere with our wireless microphones and actually cause static, and sometimes we actually have other things that happen with it. So if you could just please turn off your phones, that would be awesome. All right, Gary, if you could come up and pray for us, we would greatly appreciate it. Gary is our industrial arts instructor here at Dayton Christian, and he has been so generous to let us use his shop to be able to build this stuff. So thank you, Gary. We appreciate it, and we thank you for asking a blessing upon us tonight.
You join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing us with this opportunity to gather. We bless these students with the talents that they present tonight. We thank you for the leadership in all of the mentors that they have in this production. And we just ask you, Lord, that this production and all of us gathering here may glorify you. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
So how many people have actually read any of C.S. Lewis's work? Anybody? Oh, a few people. Okay, what about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Have you ever read that? Oh my goodness. Okay, we have really a challenge before us this evening. I was first introduced to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and C.S. Lewis when I was a student here at Dayton Christian in 1974. I was a sophomore, and we did a skit based on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I played the professor, Professor Kirk. I had never read the story at that point, but since have read most of C.S. Lewis's work, and throughout my lifetime have read the stories, the entire Narnia Chronicles aloud to my children on multiple occasions. I love the story, I love the work of C.S. Lewis, and it is such an honor and a privilege tonight to be able to bring it to the Dayton Christian stage really for the first time, because when I did it in 1974, I think we probably had 5 students that came and saw us do this little skit thing. So this is official, this is legit. So please welcome the actors and actresses of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to the stage here at Dayton Christian Arena Theater.
Chapter 1. Lucy looks into a wardrobe. Once there were 4 children whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This is the story of something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. Goodbye, my loves. Peter, Edmund, watch over your sisters. Be brave. Goodbye.
They were sent to the house of an old professor who lived in a very large house in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife but lived with a housekeeper called Mrs. McCready and 3 servants.
He was a very old man with shaggy white hair, and the children liked him almost at once. But the first night when he came out to meet them at the front door, he was so odd-looking that Lucy,
who was the youngest, was a little afraid of him, and Edmund, who was the next youngest, wanted to laugh and had to keep blowing his nose to hide it. Edmund!
As soon as they had said goodnight to the professor and gone upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they all talked it over.
We've landed on our feet and no mistake. This is going to be be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like.
I think he's an old dear.
Oh, come off it. Don't go on talking like that.
Like what? Anyway, it's time you were in bed.
Trying to talk like mother. And who are you to say when I'm to go to bed? Go to bed yourself.
Hadn't we all better go to bed? There's sure to be a row over her talking here.
No, there won't. I tell you, this is the sort of house where no one is going to mind what we do. Besides, they won't hear us. It's about 10 minutes walk from here down to the dining room.
What's that noise?
It's only a bird, silly.
Owl. Oh, this is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I should go to bed now. But I say, let's go and explore tomorrow. You could find anything in a place like this. Did you see those mountains as we came by? And the woods? There could be eagles. There could be stags.
Badgers.
Oh, foxes.
Rabbits.
But when next morning came, there was a steady rain falling, so thick that they could see neither the mountains nor the woods. They finished their breakfast with the professor and went upstairs to the room he had set apart for them.
Of course, it would be raining.
Do stop grumbling, Ed. 10 to 1 it'll clear up in an hour or so. And in the meantime, we're pretty well off. There's a wireless and lots of books.
For me, I'm going to explore the house.
Everyone agreed to this, and that was how the adventures began. It was the sort of house that you never seemed to come to the end of, and it was full of unexpected places. The first few doors they tried led only into spare bedrooms, but soon they came to a very long room, all hung with green, full of paintings, with a harp and a suit of armor, and then a whole series of rooms that led into one another and were lined with books, most of them very old books, and some bigger than a Bible in a church. And shortly after that, they looked into a room that was quite empty, except for one big wardrobe.
Well, nothing there.
And they all trooped out again, all except Lucy. She stayed behind because she thought it would be worthwhile trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she felt almost sure that it would be locked. To her surprise, it opened quite easily, and 2 mothballs dropped out. Looking inside, she saw several coats hanging up. Lucy immediately stepped into the wardrobe, leaving the door open behind her, of course, because she knew that it is very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe. She went further in and saw that there was a second row of coats hanging up behind the first one. It was quite dark in there. She kept her arms stretched out in front of her so as not to bump her face into the back of the wardrobe. She took a step further, then 2 or 3 more, always expecting to feel woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she did not.
This must be a simply enormous wardrobe.
Going further in and pushing the soft folds of the coat aside to make room for her, Lucy noticed that there was something crunching under her feet.
I wonder, is that more mothballs?
She stooped down to feel it with her hand, but instead of feeling the hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold.
How strange.
She went on a step or 2 further. She found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough and even prickly.
Why, it is very like branches of trees.
And then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away from where the back of the wardrobe ought to have been, but a long way off. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later, she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood at nighttime, with snow under her feet and snowflakes falling through the air. She looked back over her shoulder, and there, between the dark tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe, and even catch a glimpse of the empty room from which she had set out. It seemed to still be daylight there.
I can always get back if anything goes wrong.
Chapter 2. What Lucy found. She began to walk towards the other light, over the snow and through the wood. Upon reaching it, she found that there was a lamppost. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of the wood, and wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter-patter of feet coming towards her. Then, from among the trees, a strange person stepped into the light. From the waist upwards, he was like a man, but his legs were shaped like goats. Instead of feet, he had hooves. He had a strange but pleasant little face, with a short pointed beard and curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck 2 horns, one on each side of his forehead. He was a farmer. One of his hands held an umbrella, while on the other arm he carried several brown paper parcels. When he saw Lucy, he gave such a start of surprise that he dropped all his parcels.
Goodness gracious me.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Excuse me. I don't mean to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve?
My name's Lucy.
But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl.
Of course I'm a girl.
You are, in fact, human.
Of course I'm human.
To be sure. But I've never seen a son of Adam or daughter of Eve in the wood. I am delighted, that is to say, delighted. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus.
I'm very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus.
And may I ask, oh daughter of Eve, how have you come into Narnia?
Narnia? What's that?
This is the land of Narnia, where we are now. All that lies between that lamppost and the great castle of Canterville on the eastern sea. And you have come from the wild woods of the west?
I got in through the wardrobe in the spare room.
Ah, if only I'd worked harder at geography when I was a little one. I should no doubt know all about these strange countries. It is too late now.
They aren't countries at all. It's only just back there. At least, I'm not sure. It is summer there.
Meanwhile, it is winter here in Narnia, and has been for ever so long. We shall both catch a cold if we stand here talking in the snow. Oh, Lucy, daughter of Eve, from the far land of Spelboom, where eternal summers reign, or in the bright city of Wardrobe, how would it be if you came and had tea with me?
Thank you very much, Mr. Tumnus, but I was wondering whether I ought to be getting back.
But it's only just around the corner, and there'll be a roaring fire and toast, sardines, and cake.
Well, it's very kind of you, but I shan't be able to stay long.
If you'll take my arm, daughter of Eve, I should be able to hold the umbrella over both of us. That's the way. Now, if we go.
So Lucy found herself walking through the wood, arm in arm with this strange creature, as if they had known one another all their lives. At the bottom of one small valley, Mr. Tumnus turned suddenly aside, as if he were going to walk into an unusually large rock. But at the last moment, Lucy found he was leading her to the entrance of a cave. As soon as they went inside, she found herself blinking in the light of a wood fire.
Now, we shan't be long.
Lucy thought she had never been in a nicer place. It was a little dry, cleanish cave of red stone with a carpet on the floor. The room had a dresser, a whole wall with a shelf full of books, and a mantelpiece over the fire. Above it was a picture of an old farmer with a gray beard. Next to it was a table with 2 little chairs.
One for me, and one for a friend.
It was a wonderful tea. There was a nice brown egg, lightly boiled, for each of them, then sardines on toast, then butter toast, and a sugar-topped cake. When Lucy was tired of eating, the fawn began to talk.
Now, daughter of Eve, let me tell you about the great midnight dances in Narnia in the days gone by. Now, the nymphs who lived in the wells and the dryads who lived in the trees came out to dance with us fawns. And the great hunting party, chasing after the white stag, would give you wishes if you caught him.
How delightful.
And there was great feasting and treasure-seeking with the wild red boars in deep mines and caverns beneath the forest floor. And the glorious summers, when the woods were green and the forest would give itself up to jollification for weeks on end. Oh, now it is always winter.
Lucy was enchanted by these fascinating tales, and after some time, Mr. Tumnus took a strange little flute from its case on the dresser and began to play. The tune he played made Lucy want to laugh and cry, dance, and go to sleep, all at the same time. so it must have been hours later when she suddenly sat up in her chair.
Oh, Mr. Tumnus, I'm so sorry to stop you. I do love that tune, but really I must go. I only meant to stay for a few minutes.
It's no good now. You know.
No good? What do you mean? The others will be wondering what has happened to me. I do need to go. Mr. Tumnus, whatever is the matter? Aren't you well? Dear Mr. Tumnus, do tell me what's wrong. Mr. Tumnus! Do stop! You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a great big fawn like you. What on earth are you crying about?
I'm crying because I've been such a bad fawn.
I don't think you're a bad fawn at all. I think you're a very good fawn. And the nicest fawn I've ever met.
Oh, you wouldn't say that if you knew. No, I am a bad fawn. I don't suppose there was ever a worse fawn since the beginning of the world.
But what have you done?
My old father now. That's his picture on the mantelpiece. He would never have done a thing like this.
Thing like what?
Like what I've done. Taken service under the White Witch. That's what I am. I'm in the pay of the White Witch.
The White Witch? Who's she?
Who is she? Why, it is she who has got all of Narnia under thumb. It is she that makes it always winter, and never Christmas. Just think of that.
How awful! But what does she pay you for?
That's the worst of it. I'm a kidnapper folk. Look at me, daughter. Would you believe that I'm the sort of fawn to meet a poor, innocent child in the wood, one that had never done me any harm, and to pretend to be friends with it, and invite it into my home, into my cave, all for the sake of lulling her asleep and handing it over to the White Witch?
No, I'm sure you wouldn't do anything of the sort.
But I have.
Well, that was pretty bad, but I'm so sorry for it that I'm sure you'll never do it again.
Don't you understand, daughter V? It's not something that I have done. It's something that I'm doing right now, this very moment.
What do you mean?
You are the child. I was given orders by the White Witch that if I ever saw a son of Aaron, a daughter of Eve in the wood, I was to capture them and bring them to her. And all this time I pretended to be your friend and asked you to tea. And all this time I've been meaning to wait till you were asleep and to go and tell her.
Oh, but you won't, Mr. Tempest. You won't, will you? Indeed, you really mustn't.
And if I don't, she's sure to find out. She'll have my horns sawn off, and my tail cut off, and my beard plucked out, and if she's extra especially angry, she'll wave her wand and turn me into stone, and I'll be the only statue of a fawn in her horrible house, until the 4 thrones at Caerphilly built. And goodness knows when that will happen, or if it will ever happen at all.
I'm very sorry, Mr. Thomas, but please let me go home.
Oh, of course I will. I've got to. I see that now. I hadn't known what humans were like before I met you. I can't give you over to the White Witch. Not now that I know you. But we must be on at once. I'll see you after the lamppost. I suppose you can find your own way back to Sparrowwood Wardrobe from there.
I think I can.
We must go quietly. The whole wood is full of spies. Even some of the trees are on the side.
Mr. Thomas once more put up his umbrella and gave Lucy his arm. The journey back was not at all like the journey to the fawn's cave. They stole along as quick as they could, without speaking a word. Lucy was relieved when they reached the lamppost again. She looked very hard between the trees and could just see in the distance a patch of light that looked like daylight.
Can you find your way back from here, daughter Eve?
Yes, I can see the wardrobe door.
Then be off as quick as you can. And will you ever forgive me for what I meant to do?
Why, of course I can. And I do hope you won't get into any dreadful trouble on my account.
Farewell, daughter Eve. And perhaps let me keep the handkerchief?
Rather.
Chapter 3, Edmund and the Wardrobe. Presently, instead of Rough Branch, Lucy felt cold, and all at once she found herself jumping out from the wardrobe into the same empty room from which the whole adventure had started. She shut the wardrobe door tightly behind her and looked around, panting for breath. It was still raining, and she could hear the voices of the others in the passage.
I'm here! I've come back! It's all right, I've come back!
What on earth are you talking about, Lucy?
Why, haven't you all been wondering where I was?
Oh, so you've been hiding, have you? Poor old you, hiding and nobody noticed. You'll have to hide a bit longer than that if you want people to stop looking for you.
But I've been away for hours and hours!
Batty, quite Batty. What do you mean, Lou?
What I said. It was just after breakfast when I went into the wardrobe, and we've been away for hours and had tea, and all sorts of things have happened.
Don't be silly, Lucy. We've only just come out of the room a moment ago, and you were there then.
No, she's not being silly at all. She's making up a story for fun. And why shouldn't she?
No, Peter, I'm not. It's a magic wardrobe. There's a wood inside it, and it's snowing, and there's a fawn and a witch, and it's called Narnia. Come and see.
The others did not know what to think, but Lucy was so excited that they all went back with her into the room.
Now, go in and see for yourselves.
Why, you goose. It's just an ordinary wardrobe. Look, there's the back of it. Then everyone looked in and pulled the coats apart, and they all saw, Lucy herself saw, a perfectly ordinary wardrobe. There was no wood and no snow, only the back of the wardrobe.
Jolly good hoax, Lou. You've really taken us in, I must admit. We half believed you.
But it wasn't a hoax at all. Really and truly, it was all different a moment ago. Honestly, it was, I promise.
That's taking it a bit far, Lou. You've had your joke, hadn't you better drop it now?
Lucy grew very red in the face and tried to say something, but instead burst into tears. For the next few days, she was miserable. She could have made up with the others quite easily at any moment, if only she had said it was a story made up for fun. But Lucy was a very truthful girl, and she knew that she was really in the right. She couldn't bring herself to say this. The others who thought she was telling a lie, and a very silly lie too, made her very unhappy, especially Edmund, who could be quite spiteful. He sneered and jeered at Lucy and kept on asking her if she'd found any new countries in the cupboards of the house. And so things went, until the next rainy afternoon, when they all decided to play hide and seek. Susan was it, and they all scattered to hide. Lucy didn't mean to hide in the wardrobe, but she knew it would only set the others talking. But she did want to have one more look inside it, for by now she was beginning to wonder herself whether Narnia and the fawn had been a dream. As soon as she reached it, she heard steps in the passage outside, and there was nothing to do but jump into the wardrobe and hold the door closed behind her. However, it was Edmund, not Susan, who had entered the room just in time to see Lucy vanishing into the wardrobe. He at once decided to get into it himself, because he wanted to go on teasing her about her imaginary country. He opened the door. There were the coats hanging up, and the smell of mothballs, and darkness and silence, but no sign of Lucy.
She thinks I'm Susan come to catch her, so she's keeping very quiet in the back.
He jumped in and shut the door, and began searching about for Lucy in the dark. He had expected to find her in a few seconds, but was surprised when he did not. He decided to open the door again and let in some light, but he could not find the door either. He didn't like this at all and began grabbing wildly in every direction.
Lucy, where are you? I know you're here.
There was no answer. Edmund noticed that his own voice had a curious sound. Not the sound you'd expect from a wardrobe, but a kind of open-air sound. He also noticed that he was unexpectedly cold, and then he saw a light.
Lucy, I'm here too. It's Edmund. He's angry about all the things I've been saying recently. I say, Lou, do come out. I see now you're right to move on. It's a magic wardrobe after all. Just like a girl sulking somewhere. I won't accept an apology.
Chapter 4, Turkish Delight. had decided he did not much like this place, and had almost made up his mind to go home, when he heard a sound of bells. As he listened, the sound came nearer and nearer, and at last there swept into sight a sleigh drawn by 2 reindeer.
Stop the sleigh!
On the sleigh sat a dwarf, dressed in polar bear's fur, wearing a red hood with a long gold tassel. Behind the dwarf, on a much higher seat, sat a lady, greater than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. She was covered in white fur up to her throat, and held a long straight wand in her hand, and wore a crown on her head. Her face was white, not merely pale, but white like snow. Except for her very red mouth, it was a beautiful face in other respects, but proud, cold, and stern.
And what, pray, are you?
My name's Edmund.
Is that how you address a queen?
Beg pardon, Your Majesty. I didn't know.
I know the Queen of Narnia. He shall know us better hereafter. But I repeat, what are you?
Please, Your Majesty, I don't know what you mean. I'm at school, at least I was. It's the holidays now.
But what are you? Are you a great overgrown dwarf who has cut off his beard?
No, Your Majesty, I've never had a beard. I'm a boy.
A boy? Do you mean that you are a son of Adam? I see you are an idiot, whatever else you may be. Answer me, I shall lose my patience. Are you human?
Yes, Your Majesty.
How did you come to enter my dominion?
Please, Your Majesty, I came in through a wardrobe.
A wardrobe? What do you mean?
I opened the door and just found myself here, Your Majesty.
A door? A door to the world of men? I've heard such things. This may break all! No. He has only one leg. Easily dealt with. Oh, my poor child. Are you cold? Come, sit by me and I shall wrap my mantle around you and we shall talk. Perhaps something hot to drink? Should you like that?
Yes, please, Your Majesty.
The queen took from among her wrappings a very small bottle. Then, holding out her arm, she let one drop fall from it. Edmund saw the drop for a second, shining in mid-air like a diamond. But the next moment, there was a hissing sound, and a jeweled cup full of something that steamed appeared. The dwarf immediately took this and handed it to Edmund with a bow.
It is dull, son Adam, to drink without eating. What would you like best to eat?
Turkish delight, please, Your Majesty.
The queen let another drop fall, and instantly there appeared a round box tied with green silk ribbon, which when opened turned out to contain several pounds of the best Turkish delight. While he was eating, the queen kept asking him questions, and the more he ate, the more he wanted to eat. He never asked himself why the queen should be so inquisitive, but he explained his sister had already been in Narnia and had read a poem there, and that no one except himself and his brothers and sisters knew anything about Narnia.
You are sure there are just 4 of you? 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve, neither more nor less.
Yes, Your Majesty, I've told you that before.
At last, the Turkish delight was all finished. The queen knew quite well what Edmund was thinking, for she knew, though he did not, that this was enchanted Turkish delight, and that anyone who had once tasted it would want more and more of it, and would even, if allowed, go on eating it till they killed themselves.
Son of Adam, I would very much like to see your brother and sisters. Would you bring them to come visit me?
I'll try.
Because if you did come again, bringing the others with you, of course, I could give you more Turkish delight. No, I can't do it now. The magic will only work once. But at my house, it would be another matter.
But why can't we go to your house now?
Oh, it's a lovely place, my house. I'm sure you would like it. Whole rooms full of Turkish delight. And what's more, I have no children of my own, and I've been looking all my life for a truly nice boy I could bring up as a prince, to be king of Narnia when I am gone. The prince would wear a gold crown and eat what he liked when he liked. And you are the cleverest and handsomest young man I've ever met. I think I shall make you prince someday when you bring the others to visit me.
But why not now?
Well, if I took you there now, I wouldn't get to meet your brother and sisters. I very much want to know your charming relations. You are to be prince, later on king, that is understood. But you'll meet nobles and courtiers. I shall make your brother duke and your sisters duchesses.
But there's nothing special about them, and I could always bring them some other time.
Oh, but once you're at my house, you might forget all about them. You'd be enjoying yourself so much you needn't bother going to fetch them. No, you must go back to your own country now and come back with them another day.
But I don't even know the way back to my own country.
Ah, that's easy. Do you see that lamppost? Straight on, beyond that, is the way to the world of men. Now, look the other way. Do you see those two hills rising above the tree?
I think I can.
In between those two hills is my house. When you come back, you need only to find the lamppost, look for the two hills, and walk through the wood till you reach my house. But remember, you must bring the others with you.
I'll do my best.
Oh, by the way, you needn't tell them about me. Wouldn't it be fun to keep a secret between us two? Make it a surprise for them? Yes, just bring them along the two hills. A clever boy like you would easily think of some excuse for doing that. When you reach my house, you would simply say, "Let's see who's here." Yes, or something like that. Yes, I'm sure that would be best. If your sister has met one of the fawns, she may have heard strange stories about me. Nasty stories that would make her afraid to visit me. Fawns will say anything, you know. And now...
Please, could I just have one more piece of Turkish delight to eat on the way home?
No! No, you must wait till next time. Next time, don't forget. Come soon.
Edmund? Oh, Edmund, so you've got him too? Isn't it wonderful? And now we will be...
All right. I see you were right all along. It's a magic wardrobe after all. I'll say I'm sorry if you like. But where on earth have you been all this time? I've been looking for you everywhere.
If I'd have known you got in, I'd waited for you. I've been having lunch with Dio to tell Mr. the Fawn. He's very well, and the White Witch has done nothing to him for letting me go. So he thinks she can't have found out. And perhaps everything is going to be all right after all.
The White Witch, who's she?
She's a perfectly terrible person. She calls herself the Queen of Narnia, though she has no right to be queen at all. All the fauns and dryads and naiads and dwarfs and animals, at least all the good ones, simply hate her. She can turn people into stone and does all kinds of horrible things. And she has made a magic so that it's always winter in Narnia. Always winter, but it never gets to Christmas. And she drives about on a sleigh drawn by a reindeer with a wand in her hand and a crown on her head.
Who told you all those things about the Queen?
Mr. Tumnus, the fawn.
You can't always believe what fawns say.
Who said so?
Everyone knows it. Ask anybody you like. But it's a pretty poor sport standing here in the snow. Let's go home.
Yes, let's. Oh, Edmund, I am glad you've got in too. The others will have to believe in Narnia now that both of us have been here. What fun it will be! Edmund did not think that it would be fun. He would have to admit to the others that Lucy had been right, and he felt sure they would be on the side of the fawns and the animals, and he was already more than half on the side of the witch. He wondered how he would keep a secret, when suddenly they felt coats around them instead of branches, and the next moment they were both standing outside the wardrobe in the spare room. I say, you do look awful, Edmund. Don't you feel well?
I'm all right.
Come on then, let's go find the others. What a lot we shall have to tell them. And what wonderful adventures we shall have now that we're all in it together.
Chapter 5. Back on this side of the door.
Peter, Susan! It's all true. Edmund has
That is a country you can get to through the wardrobe. Edmund and I both got in. We met one another there in the wood. Go on, Edmund, tell them all about it.
What's this all about, Ed?
Yes. Tell us, Ed. Now we come to one of the nastiest things in this story. Up to that moment, Edmund had been feeling sick and sulky and annoyed with Lucy for being right, but he hadn't made up his mind what to do. When Peter suddenly asked him this question, Edmund gave a very superior look as if he were far older than Lucy.
Oh yes, Lucy and I have been playing, pretending that all the story about a country in the wardrobe is true. And just for fun, of course. There's nothing there, really. Look, there she goes again.
Look here. Just shut up. You've been perfectly beastly to Lou ever since she started this nonsense about the wardrobe. And now you go playing games with her just to set her off again. I believe you did it simply out of spite.
But it's all nonsense.
Of course, it's all nonsense. That's just the point. Lou was perfectly all right when we left home, but ever since she's got here, she either seems to be getting a bit daft in the head or turning into a most frightful liar. But whatever 'tis, what good do you think you'll do by jeering and nagging at her one day and encouraging her the next?
I thought.
Didn't anything at all. It's just spite. You've always enjoyed being beastly to anyone smaller than yourself. We've seen that at school before now.
Do stop it. Won't make things any better having a row between you two. Let's go and find Lucy. It was not surprising that when they found Lucy, everyone could see that she had been crying. Nothing they could say to her made any difference. She stuck to her story.
I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. You can tell the professor, or you can write to Mother, or you can do anything you like. I know I've met a fawn in there, and I wish I'd stayed there. And you're all beasts, beasts!
It was an unpleasant evening. Lucy was miserable. Edmund's plan wasn't working. And the older two were really beginning to think that Lucy was out of her mind. The next morning, after much thought, Peter and Susan decided to tell the whole thing to the professor.
Getting beyond us. You're right, Father. I think there's something really wrong with you. Let's go.
Hello? Hello? Oh, yes, please, do come in. Do come in.
He sat listening to them with the tips of his fingers pressed together and never interrupting. After they finished, he said nothing for quite some time. Then he cleared his throat and said the last thing either of them expected.
How do you know that your sister's story is not true?
Oh, but Edmund said they had only been pretending.
That is a point, but certainly deserves consideration. Very careful consideration. For instance, if you'll excuse me for asking the question, but does your experience lead you to regard your brother or your sister as the more reliable? I mean, which is more truthful?
Well, that's just the funny thing about it, sir. Up till now, I'd have said Lucy every time.
And what do you think, my dear?
Well, in general, I say the same as Peter. But this couldn't be true. All this about the wood and the fawn.
That is more than I know. The charge of lying against someone is a very serious thing. A very serious thing indeed.
We were afraid it might indeed be lying. We thought there might be something wrong with Lucy.
Madness, you mean? Oh, you can make your minds easy about that. One only has to look at her and talk to her to see that she is not mad.
But then,
Logic! Why don't they teach logic at these schools? There are only three possibilities. Either your sister is telling lies, or she's mad, or she's telling the truth. You know that she doesn't tell lies, and it is obvious that she is not mad. For the moment then, unless any further evidence turns up, you must assume that she is telling the truth.
But how could it be true, sir?
Why do you say that?
Well, for one thing, why doesn't everyone find this country every time they go to the wardrobe? There was nothing there when we looked. Not even Lucy pretended there was.
What does that to do with it?
Well, sir, things are real. They're there all the time, aren't they?
Are they?
But there was no time. Lucy had no time to have gone anywhere, even if there was such a place. She came running after us the very moment we were out of the room. It was less than a minute, and she pretended to have been away for hours.
That is the very thing that makes her story so likely to be true. There really is a door in this house that leads to some other world. I should warn you that this is a very strange house. Even I know very little about it. If I said she had gone into another world, I should not be at all surprised to find that the other world is a separate time than its own, so that however long you stay there, it won't take up any of our time. On the other hand, I don't think many girls of her age would invent this idea for themselves. If she had been pretending, she would have waited for a reasonable time for coming out and telling her story. Yes, quite right, quite right.
You really mean, sir, that there could be other worlds all over the place, just round the corner? Like that?
Nothing is more probable. I wonder what they do to teach them at these schools.
What are we to do?
My dear young lady, there is one plan which no one has yet suggested, which is well worth trying.
What's that?
We might all try minding our own business.
And that was the end of that conversation. After this, Peter saw to it that Edmund stopped jeering at Lucy, and neither she nor anyone else felt inclined to talk about the wardrobe at all. So for a time, it looked as if the adventures were coming to an end, but that was not to be. This house of the professor's was so old and famous that people from all over England used to come and ask permission to see it. When parties of sightseers arrived, I showed them round, telling them about the pictures and the armor, the rare books in the library. It's true that I was not particularly fond of children, and I didn't like to be interrupted when telling visitors all the things that I knew. In fact, I told Susan and Peter almost on the first morning, along with a good many other instructions, and you are to keep out of the way when I'm taking apart your open house. But that was how the adventures began, for the second time.
Chapter 6, Into the Forest. A few mornings later, Peter and Edmund were looking at the suit of armor. The two girls rushed into the room.
Look out! Here comes the Macready, and a whole gang with her!
Sharp's the word.
All four made off through the door at the far end of the room. But when they had got out, they suddenly heard voices ahead of them and realized that Mrs. Macready must be near. Then, whether it was that they lost their heads, or that Mrs. Macready was trying to catch them, or that some magic in the house had come to life and was chasing them towards the wardrobe, they seemed to find themselves being followed everywhere.
All of those troubles. Here, let's get into the wardrobe room until they pass. No one will follow us in there.
But the moment that they were inside of the room, they heard the voices outside in the passage, and then someone fumbling at the door, and then they saw the handle turning.
Quick, there's nowhere else.
They flung open the wardrobe. All four of them bundled inside and sat there panting in the dark. Peter held the door closed, but did not shut it, for of course he remembered, as every sensible person does, that you should never, ever shut yourself up in a wardrobe.
I wish the Macready would hurry up and take all these people away. They're getting horribly cramped.
And what a filthy smell of camphor.
I expect the pockets of these coats are full of it, to keep the moths away.
There's something sticking into my back.
And is it just cold?
Now that you mention it, it is cold. Oh, hang it all, it's damp too. What's the matter with this place? I'm sitting on something wet. It's getting cold every minute.
I think they've gone by now.
Oh, what's the matter, Susan? I'm sitting against a tree. And look, it's getting light over there.
You're right, Sue. And look, there! And there! There's trees. stuff is snow. I do believe we've gone into Lucy's wood after all.
There was no mistaking it. All 4 children stood blinking in the light of a winter's day. Behind them were coats hanging on pegs, and in front of them, a snow-covered wood.
Lucy, I am sorry. I apologize for not believing you. Will you shake hands?
Of course. Now, what do we do next?
Do I go and explore the wood, of course?
It's pretty cold. What about putting on some of those coats?
Not ours.
I'm sure no one will mind. It isn't as if we wanted to take them out of the house. We shan't even take them out of the wardrobe.
Maybe you're right. Of course. Now that you put it that way, I see. No one could say you've bagged a coat unless you keep it in the wardrobe where you found it. Then, I suppose this whole country is in the wardrobe.
They immediately carried out Susan's very sensible plan. Peter then began leading the way into the forest.
We can pretend we are Arctic explorers.
I have a feeling this is going to be exciting enough without pretending.
Shouldn't we be heading a bit more to the left? That is, if we're aiming for the lamppost?
Everyone stopped. Everyone stared at him. Edmund had forgotten that he must pretend to have never been in the wood before. He realized that he had just given himself away.
So you really were here. The time Lou said she'd met you in here. And you made out she was telling lies. Of all the poisonous little beasts.
Pay you all out for this, you pack of stuck-up cessars like prigs.
By the way, where are we going?
Well, I think Lou ought to be our leader. Goodness knows she deserves it. Where will you take us, Lou?
What about going to see Mr. Tumnus? He's the nice man I told you about.
Everyone agreed to this, and off they went, walking briskly. Lucy proved a good leader, taking them to the very door of Mr. Tumnus's cave. But there, a terrible surprise awaited them. The door had been smashed off its hinges and broken into bits. The cave was dark and cold. Snow had drifted in and was heaped on the floor. The crockery lay smashed, and the picture of the fawn's father had been slashed into shreds with a knife.
Yeah, this is a pretty good washout. Not much good coming here.
What's this?
Is there anything written on it?
I think so. I can just read it in this light. Let's get out into the open air. The former occupant of these premises, Lord Thomas, has been arrested, waiting trial of high treason against Her Imperial Majesty Jadis, Chatelaine of Cape Farewell, Empress of the Lone Islands, Queen of Narnia. Also for harboring spies, fraternizing with humans, and comforting her enemies. Signed, Mogram, Captain of the Secret Police. Long live the Queen.
I don't know that I'm going to like this place after all.
Who is this Queen, Lou? Do you know anything about her?
She isn't a real queen at all. She's a horrible witch, the White Witch. Everyone, all the wood people, hate her. She has made an enchantment over the whole country so that it's always winter and never Christmas. I wonder if there's any point in going on. I mean, it doesn't seem particularly safe here. It doesn't look as if it'll be much fun either. getting colder every minute, and we brought nothing to eat. What about just going home? Oh, but we can't. Don't you see? We can't just go home now, not after this. It's all on my account that the poor Front has got into this trouble. He hid me from the witch and showed me the way back. That's what it means by comforting the Queen's enemies and fraternizing with humans. We simply must try to rescue him.
A lot we could do. We haven't even got anything to eat.
Shut up, you. What do you think, Susan?
I have a feeling that Lou is right. I don't want to go a step further, and I wish we'd never come, but I think we must try to do something for Mr. whatever his name is. I mean,
That's what I feel too. I am worried about having no food with us. I vote for going back and getting something from the larder, only there doesn't seem to be any certainty of getting into this country after you've got out of it. I think we'll have to go on.
so do I. I suppose so.
If only we knew where the poor chap was imprisoned.
They were all still wondering what to do next when Lucy said,
Look, there's a robin. It almost looks as if it wanted to say something to us. Please, can you tell us where Tumnus the fawn has been taken to?
As she said this, she took a step towards the bird. It at once flew away, but only as far as to the next tree. There it perched and looked at them very hard as if it understood all that they had been saying.
Do you know, I really believe he means us to follow him. I've an idea he does. What do you think, Peter?
Well, we might as well try it.
The robin appeared to understand the matter thoroughly. It kept going from tree to tree, always a few yards ahead of them, but always so near that they could easily follow it. They had been travelling in this way about half an hour or so, with the two girls in front, when Edmund said to Peter,
If you're not still too high and mighty to talk to me, I've something to say which you had better listen to.
What is it?
It's no use letting it go. Do you realize what we're doing?
What?
We're following a guy we know nothing about. How do we know it's not on the wrong side? How do we know it's not leading us into a trap?
Well, that's a nasty idea. Steal the robin, you know. They're nice birds in all the stories I've ever read. Damn sure would be leading us to the wrong side.
And when it comes to that, how do we know which one is the right side? Yes, you've been told she's a witch, but between the queen and the fawns, we don't really know anything about either.
The fawn saved Lucy.
Oh, she said he did, but how do we know? Here's another thing. Has anyone had any idea of the way back unprepared?
Oh, great Scott. I hadn't thought of that.
No chance of dinner either.
Oh, the robin! It's flown away!
And now what are we to do?
Look! There's something moving over there, among the trees to the left. Oh, there it goes again.
I should work that down too. It's still there. It's just gone behind that big tree over there.
What is it?
Whatever it is, it's something that doesn't want to be seen. It's dodging us.
What's it like? It's a kind of animal. Look! Quick, there it is. All right. Let's go home.
and then, though nobody said it out loud, everyone suddenly saw it. A whiskered, furry face which had looked out at them from behind a tree. This time, it didn't immediately draw back. Instead, the animal put its paw against its mouth, just as a human puts their finger on their lips when they are signaling you to be quiet.
I know which it is. It's a beaver. I saw its tail.
Chapter 7, A Day with the Beavers.
It wants us to go to it. And it's warning us not to make a noise.
I know. The question is, do we go to it or not? What do you think, Lucy?
I think it's a nice beaver.
Yes, but how do we know?
Shan't we have to risk it? It's no good just standing here. I feel I want some dinner.
Well, come on, all together now. We ought to be a match for the one beaver if it turns out to be an enemy.
So the children all got close together and walked up to the tree. Right behind it, sure enough, they found the beaver, but it still drew back.
Are you the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve?
Were some of them?
Shh! We're not safe, even here.
Why? There's no one here but us.
There are the trees. They're always listening. Most of them are on our side, but there are the trees that betray us to her. You know who I mean.
And when it comes to talking about sides, how do we know that you're on the right one?
Not meaning to be rude, Mr. Beaver, but you see, we're strangers.
Quite right. Here's my token.
Oh, it's my handkerchief. The one I gave to Mr. Thomas.
That's right. Poor fellow. He got wind of the arrest before it actually happened. Handed this over to me. He said that if anything were to happen to him, to meet you here and to take you to... They say Aslan is on the move. Perhaps it's already landed.
Now, a very curious thing happened. None of the children knew who Aslan was, any more than you do. The moment the beaver had spoken these words, everyone felt quite different. The name of Aslan, each one of the children felt something jump inside. Edmund felt a sensation of mysterious horror. Peter felt something brave and adventurous. Susan felt some delightful strain of music. It just floated by. And Lucy got the feeling you have when you wake up and realize that's the beginning of the holidays.
And what about Mr. Thomas? Where is he?
Shh! We must go where we can have a real talk. Also dinner.
No one, except Edmund, felt any difficulty about trusting the beaver now. And everyone, including Edmund, was very glad to hear the word dinner. They all hurried along behind their new friend. He led them at a surprisingly quick pace, always through the thickest parts of the forest. After an hour, when everyone was feeling very tired and very hungry, the trees began to get thinner and the ground fell steeply downhill. Just below them, they saw a dam that had been built across the river. Mr. Beaver paused with a modest expression on his face.
Oh, what a lovely dam.
Merely a trifle. It isn't really quite finished yet.
Out in the middle, and partially on top of the dam, was a funny little house, shaped rather like an enormous beehive, and from a hole in the roof, smoke was going out. When they saw it, they immediately thought of warmth and cooking. But Edmund noticed something else. A little lower down the river valley, he could see two small hills. He was almost certain they were the two small hills which the White Witch had pointed out to him when they parted from the lamppost. Between them, only a mile or so away, must be a palace. And he thought about Turkish delight, about being a king, and horrible ideas came into his head.
And I wonder how Peter will like that.
Here we are. And it looks as if Mrs. Beaver is expecting us. I'll lead the way. Be careful and don't slip.
Mr. Beaver led them in single file, right up to the door of the house, and they all went in. The first thing they saw was a kind-looking old she-beaver sitting in the corner looking wistfully at her knitting. She stopped to look and got up as soon as the children came in.
Here we are, Mrs. Beaver. I found them. You're the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve.
So you've come at last. To think that I should ever live to see this day. Oh, well, the potatoes are boiling, and the kettle is singing, and I dare say we're nearly ready.
The girls jumped right in to help Mrs. Beaver, filling the kettle, laying the table, and cutting the bread. In a very few minutes, everyone was drawing up their stools and preparing to enjoy themselves. And when they had finished, and each got out their cup of tea, they all gave a long sigh of contentment. Chapter 8. What happened after dinner?
And now, pack let up and growing nicely. It's snowing again, and that's all the better. For it means we shan't have any visitors. And if anything was trying to follow, they won't find any tracks.
Do please tell us what's happened to Mr. Tumnus.
That's bad. Very bad business. There's no doubt he was taken off by the police. Got that from a bird who saw it happen.
But where has he been taken to?
They were headed northwards when the last scene, and we all know what that means.
Actually, no, we don't.
I'm afraid it means they were taking him to her house.
What do they do to him, Mr. Beaver?
You can't exactly say for sure, but there's not many that go in there that ever come out again. Statues, awful statues, they say it is. People she's turned to stone.
But, Mr. Beaver, can't we? I mean, we must do something to save him. It's too dreadful, and it's all on my account.
I don't doubt you saving if you could, dearie. But you have no chance of getting to that house against your will, and ever coming out alive.
Couldn't we have some sort of stratagem? I mean, couldn't we dress up as or pretend to be peddlers or anything? Or wait till she's gone out, or hang it all! There must be some way. This Spot saved my sister's life at his own risk, Mr. Beaver. We can't just leave him to be. To have that done to him.
There's nothing that can be done, son of Atom. Nothing you can do of all people. But now that Aslan is on the move.
Oh, yes. Tell us about Aslan.
Yes, please do.
Who is Aslan?
Aslan, don't you know? He's the king, the lord of the whole wood, but not often here, you understand. Never in my time nor my father's time, but word has reached us that he has come back. He's in Narnia this very minute. It is he that will serve the White Witch. It is he that will save Mr. Tumnus. Not you.
She won't turn him to stone too.
Lord love you, son of Atom, what a simple thing to say. Turn him into stone. If she can stand on her own 2 feet and look him in the face, it'll be more than I expect of her. No, he'll make all things right, as it says in the old rhyme. Wrongs will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrows be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter meets its death. And when he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again. You'll understand when you see him.
But shall we see him?
Why, Dr. Reeves, that's exactly what I brought you here for. I'm to take you where you shall meet him.
Is he a man?
Aslan, a man? Certainly not. He is the king, I tell you. The son of the great emperor beyond the sea. Aslan is a lion. The great lion.
I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe? I feel rather nervous about meeting a lion.
And that you will, dearie. And no mistake. If there's anyone who can stand before Aslan without their knees knocking, they are braver than most. Or just silly.
Then he isn't safe?
Safe. Don't you hear what Mrs. Beaver tells you? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he is good. He is the king, I tell you.
Well, I'm excited to see him. Even if I do feel frightened when it comes to that point.
And so you shall, son of Atom. Word has reached us that you are to meet him tomorrow, if you can. at the stone table.
Where's that?
It's down the river. A good step from here. I'll take you to it.
But meanwhile, what about Mr. Tubnitz?
The quickest way you can help him is by going to meet Aslan. Once he's with us, then we can begin doing things. Not that we don't need you too, of course, for that's another of the old rhymes. When Adam's flesh and Adam's bone sit at Cair Paravel throne, the evil times will be over and done. So things must be drawing near their end now. He's come and you've come. We've heard of Aslan coming in these parts long ago, but never really heard of any of your kind being here before.
That's what I don't understand, Mr. Beaver. I mean, isn't the witch herself a human?
She'd like us to believe it, and it's on that she bases a claim to be queen. But she's no daughter of Eve. Comes from a line of genies and giants. No, there isn't a drop of real human blood in that witch.
And that is why she's bound all the way through, Mr. Beaver.
That's true enough, Mrs. Beaver. There be two views about humans. Meaning, and no offense to the present company, but there be no two views about things that look like humans and aren't.
I'm no good dwarves.
So far, but precious few. And they are the ones least like men. That's why the Queen is always on the lookout for any humans in Narnia. If she knew you four were here, she'd be more dangerous still.
What's that to do with it?
Because of another prophecy down at Cair Paravel. That's the castle down by the seashore. There are 4 thrones. And it's a saying down in Narnia, time out of mind, that when 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve sit in those 4 thrones, it'll be the end. Not only of the White Witch's reign, but also of her life. That's why we had to be so cautious as we came along. If she knew you were here, your lives wouldn't be worth the shake of my whiskers.
I say, where's Edmund? Edmund? Who saw him last?
How long has he been missing?
Is he outside?
They all rushed to the door. The snow was falling thickly and steadily down. And out they went, plunging into the soft, new snow, well over their ankles, looking round the house in every direction.
Edmund!
Esmond?
How perfectly dreadful. Oh, how I wish we'd never come.
What are we to do, Mr. Beaver?
Do. We must be off at once. We haven't a moment to spare.
We'll divide into 4 search parties, each one going in a different direction, and if one of us finds Edmund, we can...
Search party, son of Adam. What for?
For to look for Edmund, of course.
There's no reason in looking for him.
What do you mean? He can't have gone far. We have to find him. What do you mean when you say there's no point in looking for him?
The reason there's no point in looking for him is that we know already where he's gone off to. Don't you understand? He has gone to her, to the White Witch. He has betrayed us all.
Oh, surely. Oh, really? He can't have done that.
Can't he?
But will he know the way?
Has he ever been in this country before? Has he ever been here alone?
Oh, yes. I'm afraid he has.
And the next thing is this. Did he tell you who he met or what he did?
Well, no, he didn't.
Then mark my words. He has already joined her side. I didn't like to say it before, him being your brother-in-law, but he had the look about him of one who had met the White Witch and eaten her food. You can always tell them long enough if you've lived in Narnia. Something about their eyes.
All the same, even if he is a rather little beast, I think we ought to look for him. He is our brother, after all.
Go to the witch's house? Oh, don't you see? The only chance of saving him or yourselves is to keep away from her. How do you mean? I
all four of you. She thinks all the time of those 4 thrones I care pair about. And once all 4 inside her house, her job would be done, and there were 4 new statues in her collection before you had time to speak. No, she'll keep him alive as long as he's the only one she's got. To use as decoy, as bait, to catch the rest of you.
Oh, can no one help us?
Only Aslan. Only he can save us now.
Seems to me, my dears, that it's very important to know just when he slipped away. How much you could tell her, depending on how much you heard. For instance, have you started speaking of Aslan before you left? If not, we may do very well, for she won't know that Aslan has come to Narnia, but that we were looking for him. It will be quite off her guard as far as that is concerned.
I do remember him being here when we started talking about Aslan.
Oh, yes, he was. Don't you remember? It was he who asked whether the White Witch couldn't turn Aslan into stone, too.
Jill, you're right. It's just the sort of thing he would say, too.
Worse and worse. And the next thing is this. Was he here when I told you that the meeting place for Aslan was the stone table? Because if he was, she'll simply sledge down in that direction and get between us and the stone table. Oh, we shall in fact be cut off from Aslan.
But that's not what she'll do first. If I know her. As soon as Edmund tells her that we are here, she'll set out to catch us the very night. No, he's been gone a quarter of an hour. She could be here in another half.
That's true enough, Mrs. Beaver. And it's time we're after this. We haven't a moment to spare.
Chapter 9, Journey to the Witch's House. And now, of course, you want to know what had happened to Edmund. He had eaten his share of the dinner, but hadn't enjoyed it much because he was thinking about Turkish delight. And he heard the conversation, but hadn't enjoyed it much either, because he kept on thinking that the others were taking no notice of him. He listened until Mr. Beaver told him about Aslan and heard the whole arrangement for the stone table. It was then that he began to edge himself under the curtain which hung over the door. The mere mention of Aslan gave him a strange and horrible feeling, just as it gave the others a strange and lovely feeling. Then, while Mr. Beaver was repeating the rhyme, Edmund very quietly turned the door handle. And just before Mr. Beaver had begun telling them that the White Witch wasn't really a human, but half a djinn, half a giantess, he had moved outside and carefully closed the door behind him. Now, you mustn't think that Edmund was quite so bad that he actually wanted his brother and sisters to be turned into stone. No. However, he did want Turkish delight, and to be a prince, and eventually the king, and to pay Peter out for calling him a beast. As for what the witch would do with the others, he didn't want her to be particularly nice, but he pretended to believe that she wouldn't do anything very bad to them.
Because, of course, all those people who say nasty things about her are her enemies. Probably half of it isn't true. She was jolly nice to me anyway. Much nicer than they are. I suspect she is the rightful queen of Narnia. Much better than that awful Aslan.
At least, that was the excuse he made in his own mind for what he was doing. It wasn't a very good excuse, however, but deep down inside him, he really knew that the White Witch was bad and cruel. He trudged onward, with no coat, through the lonely silence and cold, rough terrain and deepening snow. In fact, I really think he might have given up the whole plan and gone back, and owned up and made friends with the others, if he hadn't happened to say this to himself.
When I'm king of Narnia, the first thing I shall do will be to make some decent roads.
And of course, that set him off thinking about being a king and all the other things he would do, and this cheered him up a good deal. It was a difficult journey. He was cold and tired and wet all through, from falling and stooping under branches where great loads of snow came sliding off onto his back. And every time this happened, he thought more and more how he hated Peter, just as if all this had been Peter's fault. But at last, in the middle of a little plain, between 2 hills, he saw what must be the White Witch's castle. Meanwhile, back at the Beaver's house, as soon as Mr. Beaver said,
We haven't a moment to spare.
Everyone began bundling themselves into coats, except Mrs. Beaver, who started picking up sacks and laying them on the table.
Now, Mr. Beaver, just reach down those vegetables. And if someone will get 2 or 3 loaves out of the crock over there in the corner. Here's some matches.
What are you doing, Mrs. Beaver?
I'm packing a load for each, Miss Dearie. You didn't think we set on a journey with nothing to eat, did you?
But we haven't any time. She'll be here any minute.
That's what I say.
Get along with you all. Think it over, Mr. Beaver. She can't be here for a quarter of an hour, at least.
Well, should we be off as soon as we can? To get to the stone table for her?
Yes, as soon as she's looked and can't find we're gone, she'll be off at top speed.
And that she will. But we can't get there before her, whatever we do, for she'll be on a sleigh and we'll be walking.
Then we have no hope.
Oh, don't you start fussing. Keep it half dozen handkerchiefs out of the drawer over there. Of course we've got hope. We can't get there before her, whatever we do. We can keep under cover and go by the way she won't expect. And perhaps we'll get through.
That's true enough, Mrs. Beaver. But it is time we're out of this.
Now don't you start fussing either, Mr. Beaver. Oh, I suppose I'm nearly ready. There. That's better. 5 loads for the smallest of us. That is you, my dear.
Oh, please come on.
Oh.
I suppose the sewing machine is too heavy to bring.
Yes, a great deal too heavy. And you don't think you can use it on the run, I suppose.
I just can't abide at the thought of the witch fiddling with it and breaking it or stealing it. As likely as not.
Oh, please, please.
Do please, come on.
What is it, Mr. Beaver?
Suppose I'll lock the door. We delay them a bit.
Come on.